Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for finding your new seats. Much appreciated. If you're expecting more people from your lab group and there's this gap in the middle. So if you want to slide in so that folks can find a seat more easily with your group, I would encourage that and appreciate that. We're having a little bit of a switch up as far as classes go today. We're going to be doing the shelter class, which was supposed to be scheduled for Thursday. That's now happening today. Does anyone else hear that weird? Okay. All right, so we're on page 117. You can get your journals out and be ready to take notes. There will be some contact information or maybe other things that you'd like to jot down through the class period today. So we'll be doing food on Thursday and shelter today. I hid the clicker. Coming up, there is this opportunity this coming Thursday from 11 to 2:30, just before class, is the Flourish Fair happening here in the hub. This can serve as one of your events or your second event for the class assignment. Go to the Flourish Fair and see what kinds of opportunities, beautiful opportunities that you might find for yourself. Take a friend, enjoy flourishing together. Stress management techniques, other mindfulness practices right here in the hub. So if you want to jot that down, from 11 to 2:30 on Thursday coming up. So that's the Flourish Fair. There's still an opportunity if you'd like to learn more about being a TA for BiSci 3. I have the clipboard up here that you can stop up and sign up after class. And I'll send you the sign-up sheet. It's a Google Doc where you can sign up for a slot to talk with me or with Autumn. We can share about the TA process, as well as then getting your ideas about why you think it might be interesting to be a TA. So it's about sharing stories. So clipboards, it says at the front or back. Right now I just have one up here at the front. So you can stop up after class, or you can send me a message via Canvas or email, and I'll get that sign-up sheet to you. All right, so that's that. So here we are now in part 3 of the course, and part 3 is bringing together what we know, what we learned in part 1, all of the connections that we've made. Part 2 is about things aren't going so swell on the planet, so it's kind of the hard part to hear about the challenges. And then as we go into part 3, what is your opportunity as you move forward, now having some connections, knowing what's going on the planet, and who are you? How are you going to make choices that might reduce your footprint while improving your quality of life? I understand that it might be difficult in this place where you are right now, today, when we're talking about shelter and all of the different things that serve as shelter for us. First thing that might come to mind is the shelter, the place where you keep your stuff. Thinking back to the home class, you might think about home and what that shelter looks like. And I understand you're not in a place to be buying a house or renting or choosing where you're going to live. You're kind of just here. So the information that's coming in this part 3, some of it will be useful to you now, and some of it will be useful to you if you so choose in the future. So these big, if you think back to ecological footprinting, the big sort of buckets of things that make up our impact on Earth, the food, the shelter, and the transportation. And so how are you going to choose those in order to lower your footprint and potentially increase your quality of life. So power of choice changes over time, the things that we can opt for. I like words, as you know. The word survive, continue to live or exist, especially in spite of danger or hardship. And so surviving, there are people around our globe that are working on just surviving. That danger or hardship, there are some very challenging places to live. Sometimes, even in our own community, people they don't have good shelter, that they don't have good food. So that is one thing to acknowledge. There are people who are struggling for survival, but then where we can make more choices when the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when those basic needs at the bottom are being met, then as we move up that hierarchy of needs, like we mentioned last week in the happiness class, then what we're trying to get to is thriving, where we can grow or develop well or vigorously, to prosper, to flourish. So that flourish fest on Thursday, that word flourish, to be able to bring life and meaning and excitement and all of those things that help you to feel fully yourself, becoming fully human. The idea of thriving. So we're going to talk about that. And first, I'd like you to just brainstorm, what is it that you need, not just to survive, but to thrive? What do you as an individual, not humanity, but you as an individual need to thrive? So take a moment and brainstorm that on your page 117. What do you need to thrive? Then talk to your neighbor for a moment. What do you need to thrive? Okay, great. Thank you. Who would like to speak to this? What do you need to thrive? Thanks, Jose. Yeah.
So for me, I really need like a purpose or a goal. And especially in the morning, I need like a beat, something that like I'm excited to do or something that I'm working toward. Like I feel like I just need that fire to keep me really going throughout my week. Especially like Monday, I really like try to like have that beat in the morning, whether it's music or like lighting a candle or getting up a little bit earlier before my alarm, but just really having that fire in me.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Anybody feel that? Thriving. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say like companionship. Like I feel
Mm.
like having like a support system around you is like vital to survival and like thriving in the world.
Agreed. Companionship, connections.
I was just gonna say kind of similarly, I need like support from my family and friends and like some people around me.
Hmm. It's beautiful to feel that support. There's someone in the back there too. It's beautiful to feel that support, and wherever that comes from the beat that gets you started, the warmth of the candle, the support of family.
Uh, for me, well, I guess another one would just be having an overall end goal, like working towards something, not just like thriving to get to that point and to achieve that goal.
Yeah, having something that you're working toward and achieving the end goal. So keeping that in mind as we talk about this possibility of reducing ecological footprint and improving quality of life as we go through part 3. So this doesn't just apply to the shelter class, but it will apply all the way through this end part of the course. So shelter back in the day looked pretty different than it does now. So thinking about what that shelter looks like, right? So our skin is the first kind of shelter. Our skin protects us from the elements, it protects us from diseases, it protects us. So our skin is the very first layer of thriving. And then after that, so humans were naked for a long time at the beginning of humans. And it wasn't until they started moving away from the equator out of Africa that they needed to add some layers of shelter. When they moved away to where it was going to be colder, then they started adding clothing like this. And so this is where we started with clothing, using other animal skins as our clothing. And of course, things have really gotten different. They have grown and changed over the course of time. So we are going to be talking about, and I welcome a guest speaker this afternoon, excuse me. I'm welcoming Jordan. She is here to share with us some thoughts about the now and future of clothing related to our shelter. Thanks for being here. Okay. You can advance with this triangle. Mhm. What about now? Okay, cool. I can hear myself. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I am Jordan. You're probably wondering why I'm here, what makes me qualified to talk about this. We will get to that a little bit later in the presentation. But just so you all know, I was in your shoes however many years ago, probably like 7 years ago. I don't like to think about it because I graduated way too long ago. But I was in your shoes and then was a BiSci TA. And BiSci kind of started my journey with sustainability. So jumping into the now and future of clothing, as Jen mentioned, we went from wearing furs and skins, very natural fibers as a necessity to survive and to shelter ourselves, to fast fashion. So why this is important, the fashion industry of now is the second biggest consumer of water and responsible for 10% of global carbon emissions, which is more than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. So I'm here to talk to you about how we can fix it, how to go deeper into fashion and to be a little bit more thoughtful about our clothing and our consumption. So it's really important because we get very caught up in the trends that we forget to think about where our clothes are made, who makes them, and what the deeper effects are of the fashion industry. Okay, so jumping into consumption. So consumption alone is not necessarily a bad thing. We all need to consume. Everybody needs clothing. Everybody needs to be able to protect themselves and their skin, dress for the weather, like today in our blizzard snowstorm. But there's a difference between mindful consumption and mindless consumption. So it really starts to become a problem when we get into the territory of excessive consumption. So excessive consumption is a huge problem in the US and globally. We all play a part in this, even myself. The average American buys around 60 new garments a year and throws away 65 pounds of clothing a year. So I'm sure you're thinking, well, I don't do that. That doesn't necessarily mean you are, but there are people who are buying even more than that, and that's why the average is so high. But if you think about your own closets and everything that you have, and then imagine it in a landfill, that's kind of what happens with all of these pieces. When people throw things away, even when people donate things, it does end up in landfills. With donations specifically, it's difficult because it feels like it's a good thing when you're donating to thrift stores, but because of the sheer amount of things that exist, only about 10% of what gets donated actually gets sold, and the rest still end up in landfills. And then in the US, we are consuming twice as many material goods today as compared to 50 years ago. Globally, we are producing 92 million tons of textile waste a year, and then 17 million of that is in the United States, which is about the equivalent of 46 fully filled Empire State Buildings, which is crazy to think about. So, in addition to consumption and landfills and everything ending up in landfills, there are also some downsides to the actual production process of clothing. Also, so sorry, apologies in advance. We're gonna go through the bad stuff first and then we'll get to the good stuff. But 60% of fabric is made from plastic, like polyester. So in the case of clothing in our water and how that interacts, there are microfibers and microplastics that get into the water supply every time we do a load of laundry. So 700,000 fibers from polyester fabric and natural fibers as well, but it gets really bad when it's the microplastics and the plastics from polyester. 700,000 fibers get into the water supply every time we do a load of laundry. So it gets into the water, into the fish, into animals that eat the fish, into us because we're eating the animals and the fish and drinking the water. We also waste a lot of water throughout the production process when we're making clothing. So it takes about 200 tons of water to make 1 ton of dyed fabric, even for natural fibers. So one pair of jeans uses about 3,000 to 4,000 liters of water. Most of this is to grow the cotton that's actually made into the jeans. We also have issues with the clothing dye and the colors getting into the water supply. It's not happening as much in the United States, but that's mostly because we're not really making our clothes in the United States anymore. So it's happening in a lot of the poorer countries that are actually making the clothing. And then that dye gets into the water supply, and then the people in that area don't have potable drinking water. So
in addition to thinking about the effects of the clothing ending up in landfills and the dyes ending up in water and how that affects the people in the countries who make the clothing and where all of our stuff ends up, we need to think about the actual situation itself with people who are making the clothing in the factories where everything is produced. So most of our clothing, at least for fast fashion, there are definitely some brands that are doing it better than others, but for fast fashion specifically, I'm sure many of you know this, but a lot of these clothing pieces are made in factories where people are not getting paid what they deserve. They are working in terrible working conditions, often without bathroom breaks or breaks in general. And they are getting paid practically nothing. So the lowest globally is in Ethiopia, where they're making $26 a month to make our clothing. And then it's shortly followed by Madagascar, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. So there's too many people working in these factories, and they're often working in unstable building structures as well. So for example, in spring of 2013, Rana Plaza was a building in Bangladesh that collapsed. The building owners and factory managers knew that there was a crack in the structure of the building. So the first floor, which had all of the businesses, they all evacuated, but they didn't allow any of the workers to actually leave. So it was an 8-floor building that collapsed and it killed over 1,100 people. So we really want to make sure that when we're thinking about what we're wearing and what we're buying, that we're conscious of what's kind of going on behind the scenes, which might not be something that we think about all the time. So this overconsumption that occurs isn't necessarily your fault. I also work in advertising. So I have a little bit of background into that industry. But the industry, the fashion industry, the brands themselves, the advertising, it's all made to draw you in and push this onto you. So the fashion life cycle, which I have up here, the introduction by a fashion leader, growth by consumers, the peak, the decline in fashion, and then out of fashion. This cycle used to be happening over a 20-year time period, this trend cycle. And it has progressed so significantly to the point that now everything is getting pushed at you so quickly. It's happening over like a 2-week time period. So a lot of fast fashion brands can now push out new designs, thousands of new designs within 2 weeks. As soon as something becomes popular, you can snatch it up. And then as soon as you get tired of it, you can get rid of it. And it's a very, very quick turnaround. And it used to, at least the production process, used to be every 6 months or so. Pretty similar to like the fashion weeks around the world where there's a spring summer collection and a fall winter collection versus literally release whenever you want. So along with kind of all of this being pushed at you, it's also pretty impossible to form your own personal style when you're inundated with trends constantly. Okay. So a little audience participation and a question for you guys. What do you think makes a fashion brand sustainable? And then you can talk with your neighbors and kind of discuss it, and then we'll get some audience answers. Awesome. Okay. Does anyone have any answers? Anything they want to share?
One of the things that we were talking about is having a labor commission reviewing the brand as well, making sure not only the workers living there, workers working there, but the people living around the plant or wherever these clothes are made are not harmed by the production of the clothes.
Awesome. Any other responses? Cool. Oh, yeah. In the front.
I think also using I know Coach has a thing where they have their bags where they only use old bags, I think is what it is. So using their old materials.
Yeah, I love that. It's the Coachtopia initiative. They have all the patchwork bags. They're so cool. Yeah.
Playing in a sense of devil's advocate, we were talking about how kind of any sense of fashion or materials can be seen as controversial, not necessarily fully sustainable. Because if you use cotton, of course that's a crop, and in a sense, cotton is known to be a cheaper material, so less people gravitate towards it. But then leather becomes animals, which people don't also want to use, and polyester is obviously plastics that can't necessarily ever be reused. So I just raised the question of can any material necessarily be sustainable, or are there some that are better than others?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I am going to talk about it a little bit later. I think there is a way to be more sustainable. I think a lot of just reusing things that already exist is and I mean, technically everything already exists, but clothing that already exists and is already made, upcycling is personally my favorite way of kind of, I guess, circumventing all of that and using things that people have already kind of put into production and keeping it in a cycle. And I'll explain more in a little bit. But yeah, I think that's a great thing to think about because it really is a very nuanced conversation with all of the different types of materials and what's better. Is it better to use natural materials? Do we want to use leather and real animals versus vegan leather? It is a really good conversation. I'm glad you brought it up. Awesome. Anything else?
I don't think this one was said, but I put a lot of the common stuff like reusability and consistency. But one of the things I put was simplicity, because something as simple as a T-shirt is less likely to go out of style because of its simplicity and because of how common it is, which makes it more likely that the brand doesn't need to really change what they're doing and they can keep making the same thing, which means that they don't need to stop making one thing and start making another. They can just keep making the same kinds of things, and that helps them it helps them maintain a uh I'm forgetting the word for it, but essentially, yeah,
Yes.
they're able to I'm just gonna stop trying to wrap up that sentence.
No, I get what you're trying to say. Yeah, it makes it there's less of a need to change up something and necessarily like fit with the trends with something as simple as a t-shirt. Cool. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So this is a resource that I really liked, so I wanted to show it all to you. So Good On You was a resource that I found during COVID when I was sitting at home, didn't have a job, was starting my sustainability journey and trying to get into more research about sustainable brands. So Good On You is a platform where you can look up different brands and you could see kind of how they rate on a scale of sustainability and morality, ethics, where you could see how these brands affect people, the planet, and animals, and kind of how they consider all of these things. How are we doing on time? Good. Okay. Do you mind pulling up the site? Yeah. So I think it'll be kind of fun for us to look up a few brands. So if anyone wants to kind of volunteer some of their favorite brands, we can kind of see how they measure up on a scale with how they do on this scale that Good On You came up with. So if anyone has any suggestions.
Gap.
Sure. Okay. If you want to click into it, and then we can kind of delve a little bit deeper. Okay. So it's a really cool platform because they give you the sustainability rating, but then they also kind of delve a little bit deeper into paying their workers and kind of how it works behind the scenes. And then they rate it on a scale from 1, we avoid, to 5, which is great. So Gap isn't doing terribly. They are at, it's a start. Any, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so Good On You rates Shein as we avoid, which I feel like was expected. Any others? Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah, so I feel like Old Navy and Gap are like similar. I think they're like technically under the same company too, so I think it makes sense. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Okay. Not terrible. Ooh. Not good enough. Ugh. Did someone say Vuori? Yeah, that's Vuori. It's athletic wear, right? Yeah. Mm. Oh, I looked this one up earlier. Zara? Not terrible. It's a start. It's not we avoid. Yeah. Patagonia. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, good. Awesome. Okay. Any others? Okay, H&M. Oh, I haven't heard that one in a while. Okay. Not as bad. Some of these are like shockingly not as bad as you'd think they're gonna be. Yeah. That's a good one.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Can you do Aeropostale?
Yeah, this will be the last one. Yeah. But everybody write this down so you guys can look this up later. Oof. Cool. Okay. I think we're going to keep going, but thank you all for your suggestions. Okay. Thank you. Cool. Okay. So moving into the different types of sustainability in fashion. This only has 6. There are a lot of different types of sustainability in fashion. I personally like renting and swapping, vintage and secondhand, custom making things. And then I'm here talking to you because I do recycling and upcycling, as you could probably tell from the jeans I have on and all the patches and things that I'm wearing. So that's why I'm even slightly qualified to be here to talk to you about this. So real quick, before getting into what I do, to talk a little bit about sustainability in fashion, right here at Penn State, some Penn Staters, some biomimetic engineers, realized that they could use fermentation waste and repurpose it into high-performance fibers that are stronger than natural fibers. And it's also cheaper, and it costs less water, it costs less to produce overall, and it's still able to compete with wool and other natural fibers. So if they're able to actually produce this material at scale, some of these other fibers can be phased out and, well, not phased out completely, but not focused on as much. And then the land that we're using to grow things like cotton can be used to grow food and other necessities. So it's really cool just thinking about how everybody can be looking for solutions in unusual situations. Yeah, just wanted to feature that. Jen sent me that article and it was really interesting. Okay. And then we'll do another question real quick. How do you incorporate sustainability into your lives through fashion? So if anyone, you could talk amongst yourselves, but if you have any answers. Okay. All right. Does anyone want to share? Well, okay. Does anyone want to share their responses? Yeah. Cool.
I think when you're buying clothes, even if you're still like being a consumer, you can just focus on quality.
Yeah.
Because then it'll just last you longer and you're less likely to have to rebuy the same cheap stuff.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Anyone else? Yeah. He mentioned buying quality materials, so that when you focus on buying quality materials, you don't need to buy more of the same thing because it lasts longer. Oh, looks like someone in the back.
Sometimes I wear like my roommate's clothes, so like I don't have to buy like if I see him in a hoodie I like like any leaves, I just like take it and wear it so I don't have to like buy a new one. Don't tell him though.
Yeah, I do that too.
Fair enough. I mean, if it works, it works.
Over here, we talked about supporting small businesses.
This is a great segue. So I personally love expressing myself through fashion. And I feel like I've only become truer to myself through sustainable fashion. So I have a small business. So I have a sustainable fashion brand called Earthly for the Planet. So everything is upcycled from secondhand materials. I make everything myself. Most things are made from customer donations. So people will give me things that they don't want anymore. So I keep all of it. Nothing ends up in landfills. And then all the scraps and things, I keep all of that as well. So my sewing room is like about to explode because there's so much stuff in it, but I would rather I have it than it be in a landfill. But like I mentioned at the beginning, BySci inspired my love for sustainability and kind of started this journey for me. So this was my thesis campaign when I was a senior here back in 2020. So on the left, this was the campaign that I put together. It was just an idea. But since then, that was 5 years ago. Since then, I have been sewing a lot, doing a lot of things. I went to New York, had some patchwork pieces, had some upcycled pieces in some New York Fashion Week shows. Started doing some markets and selling the pieces I make. I now live in Philly. I have some pieces in some stores in Philly. I sell some stuff online. But it's been a really, really great journey for me. Just getting to kind of delve even deeper into the process of making my own clothes, making clothes for other people, and helping more people get more use out of their clothing. A lot of people give me their own pieces to then upcycle again for them so they can get more and more wear out of it, which is awesome. But over the past 5 years, I have saved over 1,400 individual clothing items and over 600 pounds of clothing from landfills. And that was just me with my sewing machine as one person. So imagine what you could do. So just real quick, this is how I close the fashion loop as a part of Earthly. It's a process of circularity. So people give me their items, I design and transform them. I save all the scraps. My shipping and materials are all sustainable. And then customer use. And then ideally, customers will keep that item forever. But if they get too much use out of it, need it repaired, want to send it back, et cetera, et cetera. I will accept and encourage people to send their items back to me, and then we can kind of keep it back in the clothing loop and nothing ends up in landfills. So yeah, that is my spiel. Thank you all for listening. This is my website and my Instagram if you want to check it out later. Cool. Do we have time for questions or yeah? Does anyone have any questions?
We'll go until the full time. Have more to cover. But questions for Jordan about how she started, where she got her inspiration, how she makes it work.
Yeah.
Anything that you're curious about?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite piece of clothing that you've made in your journey?
That's a really good question. I mean, the pants I have on are like probably my favorite design just because they use up so much. But I make a lot of patchwork things and there's like a patchwork gown that I made that's like floor length and that one's pretty cool too. But yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, hello. I'm Daniel, but have you ever been interviewed by anybody about your brand or anything?
I have for like articles, various things. Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious about that because I'm like, I need to write a profile for one of my classes, and this seems like something really, really interesting.
Yeah.
But Ooh, what's like your go-to thrift spot?
Oh, that's a good question. So in Philly, a lot of places are very like curated, so they're not as fun to thrift at, but there's like a big Second Ave, which is like technically part of Savers, and it's kind of like a Goodwill. That's probably my favorite because you can like find a lot of like classic pieces and it's not as curated. So you kind of have to dig through everything to find the gems, which I really like.
So, quick question. I
Sure.
know that with a lot of more sustainable fashion like Doc Martens, you start to get into higher price ranges in a sense.
Mhm.
And so for college kids that don't necessarily have $150 to spend on a pair of boots
Yeah.
and like other sustainable fashion that can range from like 50 up for like a singular
Yeah.
t-shirt, what would you recommend we do? Because I know that a lot of times we look into fast fashion because we can get the same thing, but obviously for really cheaper made quality.
That's a good question. So when I was in college, I was thrifting a lot. I don't know what the thrift scene is like now. There used to be a Goodwill like right by the retreat, like on like Atherton area. I think it's like further out now. But when I was here as a student, I was pretty much thrifting everything. Um, I think too it is tough because with sustainable fashion, like it is frequently priced higher because you want to pay the workers properly. Like that's how it is for me at least. Like I want to make sure I can actually get enough money for my labor. But I think with small businesses, especially, a lot of them will have like a sliding scale, or if you like reach out to them directly, if you're like really interested in something, you can like let them know of the situation. There's like discounts, like there's definitely ways to make it work. If you like, speaking for myself, my own brand specifically, if you like wanted me to make you something, just like let me know what's going on and we can figure something out. Yeah, of course. Cool. Okay. I think that's everything then. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
So her brand is listed in the contacts, in the resources, excuse me, the resources on the opening page of the canvas. You can find Earthly for the Planet. So other ways of shelter that will talk about, I'll merge this with some other parts of other classes, but thinking about the shelter that we use as the next level. So we have our skin, we have our clothes, and then we have whatever the structures are that are around us and for us. Thinking about that, especially today in the windy day. But then what do we need, right? So this is a picture of my house. It was built in the mid 1800s. And when I bought it, I even knew at that moment that it was too much house. It was too much, it's big and it's old and it's beautiful and it's cool. It's really interesting. It has a great yard. And so the ups and downs of how we make these choices, it seems as though over the course of time, we have been needing more and more personal space, which I think is an interesting observation and study. So in 1950, the average floor area of 1,000 square feet, and at that time, people were having 3 to 4 kids. And so more people packed into a tighter space. Then moving up 1970 is where we hit 1,500 square feet. The year 2000, we were at 2,200 square feet. And now in the year 2023, the average American house built was 2,500 square feet. And so how things change over time, it's also true that most families are having around 2 kids or less these days. So needing more and more of that personal space in time, and considering how that space impacts us. What is that space and how does it suit the needs that we have? Where on Maslow's hierarchy is that space that we need? So we'll continue to talk about this. You'll find that that your Canvas discussion post will post as usual today at 4 o'clock, but it is going to be definitely related to Thursday's class instead of today's class. So just so you know, it will be there and it will make more sense to you on Thursday after class. So thanks for your attention. Thank you, Jordan, for coming. We appreciate your information and input and your creativity. And I hope that you all have a beautiful day.